Hi everybody, this is Oksana and today I'm making a 3-stone pendant, and mine turned out to be quite large due to the stones that I used. This one especially is quite long, but it can turn out all sorts of different ways depending on the sizes and shapes of your stones. But it's all about how to make a pendant using 3 cabochons. So if you want to learn how to make this, just keep watching.
So I get asked a lot how I figure out how long the wires need to be, and I never have a good answer because I just take a guess. And I'm kind of paranoid that they're going to be too short from times when I've cut them too short. And so basically for this pendant, since it's going to be the 3 stones, there's nothing going on in between the stones that requires any wire. So I just need the wire to go around the stones. I'm just taking my wire right from the spool here. So if we just do this, it's gonna go around all the stones, and then I just need a little extra at the top here. Let's go a little more like that. Just because I need the extra wire to make the bail and to make the decorations. They're not going to be too much. They're not going to be like swirly or over the top. So I don't need a lot of wire, but I need a little bit. So here's kind of what I ended up with. Comfortably going around all the stones, and then quite a bit extra at the top here. Better overestimate than run out of wire, and that's kind of how I do it. So the wire that I'm using is 20 gauge square. It's dead soft copper. This came from riogrande.com. And you can use other sizes as well. Like if your pendant is much bigger than mine, you're choosing to use some larger stones. You can size up to 19 gauge. Or, you know, if very large, you can go up to 18 gauge as well. Or if you're working with quite small stones and you need a thinner wire to be able to maneuver it better, you can go down to 21 gauge. I actually have a tutorial. It only has 2 stones, and I think I just call it like a mini pendant. I'll link it though. It's similar to this, but it has 2 stones and it's like a little mini one, and I'm pretty sure I used 21 gauge in there. So let's measure how long our wires ended up being. So 3 wires, and they are 13.5 inches. And now let's measure our stones. So I just want to mention that your stones do not have to be at all similar to mine. It's actually really fun in this design to play around with different stone combinations. Like I'm doing kind of a bigger stone on the top and a smaller stone on the bottom. You can switch that up, have them go from big to small, or just any kind of fun, cool arrangement. This pendant's really awesome for that. So this is almost exactly 1 inch, and it is an agate, and then it's an oval agate. It doesn't look oval. It's so strange. I kept looking at it thinking it's like irregular shaped stone, but that's just the pattern in it. It just like was throwing me off. When I look at it from the back, I can kind of tell that it's actually a very even oval. It's not irregular at all. My second stone is actually a little bigger than my first. I'm gonna say it's 1 inch, but as you can see, it's just a hair longer than 1 inch. But it's thinner. It's a marquise shaped, and it's a doublet where it's got quartz on top, and then on the bottom, glued to the quartz, it's got Mother of Pearl or shell, and so it kind of gives this cool effect. So that's the doublet, and then on the bottom I'm doing just a tiny little Peach Moonstone. This one doesn't have any shine to it. It's kind of a dark color for a Peach Moonstone, and it is a little less than 1/2 inch. So let's measure it in millimeters here. I would think 12 millimeters.
So about 12 millimeters, or just a tiny bit less than half an inch. But again, your stones can be absolutely anything that you want. Just if they're much bigger than mine, use a thicker wire. So let's take our wires and let's find the middle. So you can measure it if you want it to be perfect. I'm just eyeballing. This appears to be the middle. And now I'm taking some half round wire. It's just connected to the spool here. I'll show you the spool. It's just 24 gauge half round wire. Again, dead soft copper, all that. So I'm gonna take it and make that little connection in the middle there. You zoom in a little bit just to connect these wires together. And keeping in mind that my stone on the bottom there is that tiny little Peach Moonstone. So I want to wrap this enough to, make sure that these wires are securely connected together, but I probably don't want to overdo it because my stone is so small. If I make this wrap really long, it's gonna be too long for my stone. So if you're doing the wire end, you could just wrap it around and around like you saw me do. But then if you start to run out of wire and you want to use this wire connected to the spool, you have to guide it with one hand and then turn all 3 wires with the other hand. And the reason you have to do that is because half round wire, if you don't do that, it'll get all twisted up on you. And you want it to stay untwisted with the rounded part facing you and the flat part facing down into the wire. So now I'm trimming off my wire ends, making sure both wire ends are on the same side here. And now with my pliers, I am just going to press down on all of that, just like that. So you can see my wire ends there. My wrap is nice and tight and together. So this is a part that's going to touch the stone. So the wire ends will get covered up by the stone. So I'm going to start bending it because my stone is a little oval. So I know it's got kind of this rounded part on the bottom. If your stone is, for example, a teardrop, you could use your pliers and bend a sharp angle in here so that the little point of your teardrop or marquise, my next one's going to be a marquise shaped stone. You would just bend a little angle. All right, so let me see. I think I need to unbend that. I think I did that a little too much. So here's my little stone, just popping it in there and just bending the wire, making sure though that this is centered. So as of right now, it went a little bit off center there. So I'm just gonna try again. I really want it to stay nice and centered. All right, that's better. And I'm just pressing these top wires together, and I'm just kind of putting a little bend in them, going side to side here, side to side. And what that does is it brings them together like this. And if this ended up being not perfectly in the middle, you can unwrap and cut off a little bit, or you can try to move it over. It's up to you. But I think this will be okay. That looks pretty centered to me. All right, so I'm gonna put my stone back down. It's not ready quite yet for you to lock it in. So I'm just gonna press on this to make sure that the bends are nice and tight. All right, so the wires are coming together nicely. They're stacked side by side. If they aren't, actually this one is trying to leave. All right, so they just should be right on top of each other. And now I'm gonna grab my half round wire again. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab it, but I'm gonna leave myself like a long end like this. I mean, it's not very long, it's like 1.5 inches maybe. And I'm gonna wrap around a few times. So 1, 2, 3, 4 times should be good. And now what I'm gonna do, the reason I needed this little end is I'm gonna put this through the middle like this. I'm just gonna pull that through. You can use your pliers to help you if you need, because it needs to be kind of tight. And then I'm gonna bring it to the back so you can see that little tiny wrap that got formed there. Let me zoom in some more. And now it's here in the back, just going across the back, and you want it to just come back to the front, and then you want to put it through again. All right, so this time I'm just going to flip it over to the back so that I can take this little wire end, and with my pliers I'm just going to pull on it and make it nice and tight. So here from the front, it looks like you just have these 2 little wraps. So first it's wrapped around all the wires, and then it looks like you have a little wrap on one side and on the other side. So then here in the back, what I want to do, I'm just going to lift it a little bit because I want to trim it, but I want to trim it like in here so that it doesn't stick out. So if I just trim it like this, the little wire end is going to stick out the back. So I'm trimming it by just really getting in there with my wire cutters. If you're having trouble with that, maybe just pick it up and just trim it and then push it back in. That turned out okay. I don't see the wire end of my wire sticking out the back. I'm gonna see if I can feel it. No, I don't feel it. It's just right in there. And then you can kind of maybe just push it towards this top portion to cover it up. And here's what we have. So now we're going to lock in our stone. So I'm gonna grab my Xuron tweezer nose pliers. I haven't shown them in a while, so I just want to use them. They have a very nice thin flat point, so I actually really like it for this purpose here of bending the wires. But the other pliers that I've been using, I really like them too. They're Swanstrom. And you can see the tip is also quite fine, but it's not as flat, and they are wider here, so I do find them more useful for like pressing down on things because you have more surface area, whereas these are like really skinny for just like pressing down like on this bottom wrap, for example. But I like them for locking in the stone. So I just want to show you. I just grab the backmost wire and I bend that onto the stone on both sides. All right, just having trouble. I keep covering that up with my hand and then you can't see, so I'm just gonna turn it like this. So now the wire is on the stone. What you can do is just bend it a little bit in the other direction so that right here it's lined up, and you can't see that from the front. Otherwise, you might see it peeking through that gap there at the top. All right, so the back is good. It's kind of messing up these. That's why I don't want to do them yet before locking in the stone, because once you lock in the stone, it kind of moves them. So we'll get to them after. So now I'm doing the frontmost wires. These are really nice and thin to like wedge them in here, and then go down, 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 down to where the wrap begins, and then just make a little bend. And that is how we are going to trap in our stone. All right, now it should be good and trapped. Just double check it. If you feel like it can pop out, you can bend the wires some more. All right, so now we're gonna fix up this little wrap up here because it got a little bit discombobulated. The wires got a little bit moved. So I'm just gonna press down this way, and I'm gonna press down this way as well. Make sure it's all nice and neat and together. Sometimes this little wire can move out of place as well. Maybe you can see it if I hold it like this. So I'm just gonna push it up. That's a little wire end from before. All right, so that looks good. And now I'm just gonna separate these wires into their respective sides. So we have these 3 wires from this side, and then these 3 wires from the other side, just like that. And now with this wire, so here it is coming out the front, I'm just gonna pull it tight, and I'm just gonna do one more wrap. Okay, so one more wrap, and now I'm gonna wrap it around just this right side. So all the way around, just the right side. Now I'm gonna go across the back here, just bring it across the back to the front, and then I'm gonna bring it around the left side. Okay, so essentially what we did on the bottom there. And now I'm just gonna trim it, but I'm gonna trim it so it is not too long and it does not stick out all the way through to the back. So like this. Okay, just gonna press that in there, push down on it, hide that wire end, and here is what we have. I'm just kind of straightening these up. Here's what that looks like, and now we're ready for our second stone. So our second stone is a marquise, so it kind of fills in that little gap on the bottom there. But if it was like an oval or something, it would just, let me just show you. Say I wanted to put this one second, it would just kind of have to sit like this and have a little gap. I mean, you can open these up some more to minimize the gap, but either way it would be like at least a tiny little gap on the bottom there. And that's fine. That's just what happens with that shape. So, but mine is a marquise. It kind of fills in that gap because it's pointy, and same thing on top there. It's got a nice point on both sides. So I'm just bending my wires around it like this, and then here at the top I am just kind of pressing on them, going side to side, side to side, get them to line up. And there's going to be just a small little gap above the point. You can see the gap. It's very small, but you do need it for your little wires. So now I'm just going to take a look at my wires, because the thing with square wires, I do really love them because they trap these stones in really well, and they're not slippery like round wires, but they tend to get twisted. So they're supposed to have a flat side and then a corner because they're square, but you can see this one got a little bit twisted and is pointing not the flat side up. So I'm just gonna fix it a little bit, kind of line it all up with its neighbors there so that you have the flat side of them pointing towards you. Let's see how that looks. I just want them all to stack nicely on top of each other here. There we go, like that. So that's why I had to untwist them a little bit. Just pressing down on that to make sure that stacks nicely. So now let's check our stone. Okay, the stone fits. I think this got a little wider, so I'm just gonna lessen the curve like this. And bring this together again. Now let's check. All right, now because it got a little wide in the teardrop. I mean, the stone, the marquise, was a little bit loose in there, but now it's good. It fits nicely around the sides of it. There's still just a tiny little gap here at the top so we can do our wiring. It looks nice and centered. So I'm just gonna do here exactly what I did down here, taking my wire, grabbing a nice little end there, and I'm just gonna wrap around 4 times, 5. I think this ended up being 5 times because I ended up wrapping afterwards. Yeah. So just pushing that down, and oh, I need this end to be here on this side, so I'm just going to bring it across and then through the middle and back down, making a little wrap here, and now just right across the back here, taking it from the front, pulling it through, pulling it nice and tight. Oh, so this time I'll show you what you can do if you can't just get in here with your cutters to cut it nice and short, like if you keep cutting it and the little end keeps sticking out. So what you can do is you can just push it up like this, and you can see where this little bend is, where it's gonna go on this wire, so you can kind of gauge how long you need to cut it based on that. So cut it like this, and then we just have to tuck that little wire end inside and just press down on that and just kind of push it in there like that. And now we can lock in our doublet. So I'm popping that in, I'm grabbing my Xuron pliers here, grabbing the back wire and putting in an angular bend, and then here on the other side grabbing the back, let me just separate it so I can grab it easier, grabbing the backmost wire, putting in an angular bend, and now we're going to do the same thing from the front here, going down as far as you can, as close as you can get to that little wrap down there, and then bending it towards you to make a bend like this. Same thing here, working our way down, making that bend. So here's what that looks like. Check on your stone, make sure that it's not popping out the front there. You could also, if your stone for whatever reason, is feeling wobbly, maybe these wires aren't far enough on the sides, you can also come in here in the top part of it with your pliers and then do the same thing that you did on the bottom where you make little bends like that. Sometimes if you have like really thick stones, this will help stabilize them. Okay. I'm just going to bend this one a little more inwards. There we go. All right, so our stone is now secure. All right, so now I'm just going to press on this, kind of fix it up a little bit. Let's push it down in case it moved up. All right, so that is good. We can now separate these wires into the 3 that belong on this side, just these ones, and then the other 3 as well. So because my next stone has a rounded bottom, just gonna try to open these up as much as I can so I can get that bottom of the stone as close as I can here, so there isn't gonna be like a huge gap. I can tell that this wire is starting to twist and is no longer the flat side. So we're just going to do the same thing again, just pull it tight, wrap it around the left side, the right side, all the way around till it goes to the back. I'm just gonna make sure, oh, mine was starting to get twisted. I want it to stay flat side down, half rounded side up. So there it is, right side, bringing it all the way across the back and untwist it and just bring it in here like this. Now I'm just gonna trim it. And press down on that little wire end and just push it in there. All right, so that part is good now. And we can take our stone, place it in there. Let me just make sure that these are kind of equally open like this. So I'm placing the stone in there. There's going to be a little gap on the bottom. And now I am just trying to bend these wires around my stone. You can put it down on a flat surface, that makes it easier. All right, so it looks like it's kind of leaning towards this side here. So I'm just gonna open this side more and try again, because I want it to be nice and centered. I don't want it to be too much on one side. So I'm just kind of curving these a little bit so I can bring them together. I think that's looking better. I think that's looking more or less even and centered. So once you get it good, you just are going to bend these wires just side to side until they come together. One thing to note here is this little gap right above your stone. You want to make sure that it is a gap and it's not much smaller than this. So this size, or it can be a little bigger, because we're going to use it. We're going to put wires through it. So don't try to get this like super tight up against your stone that there's basically no gap. So now we're just going to wrap our half round wire. Now this portion is going to look like the typical pendant when you're making a pendant with just one stone. We're going to wrap and then make the bail. So I'm just wrapping a few times, like 5 times or so, sliding this down and then doing the same thing where I put it through. It's going around this side, then across the back, and then it's going through the middle again, which makes it go around the other side. I'm just going to pull that tight, and I'm going to get in here with my cutters and just cut that nice and short so that it fits here. And I'm just pressing down on it and also just kind of pushing it this way. I know it's hard to see, such a tiny little wire end, but here's what it looks like from the front. The wire ends are finished. You can press on this little wrap, you can move it down a little bit. And now I'm just going to make my bail. So for the bail, I'm doing the frontmost wires, the 2 frontmost wires here, just pulling them forward. And then the other wires, I just like to push them back just a smidge like this to give myself some area to work in. And now I'm going to pull on this, and as I wrap it around, this is still the same wire, I haven't cut it, and I'm just guiding it and turning the whole piece and guiding it so it goes around just those 2 bail wires, just like this. I'm just going to do that for a minute until it's about 3/4 of an inch. That's the size I like to do for my bails. Feel free to do slightly bigger or smaller if you prefer. So when you're done, you just want to trim the end of your wire so that it's here on this inside part, not here on the outside, and or on the front rather. And then we're just going to press that, because that'll make sure it gets hidden away. So we're just going to press over the whole wrap And now these wires here are going to separate them. So there's 2 that are from this side and 2 that are from this other side, like this. And we are just going to bend our bail, so you can use something to bend around if that helps you. I'm just doing it by hand, so first I bent it a little bit forward and then I'm bending it to the back, so now it has this little curve going. There we go. This is a good shape. So now I can take these wire ends, put them through like this, and now I'm just going to take the leftmost one, pull on it, and bring it from front to back like this. Now I can trim and tuck away that little wire end. Ooh, I think I cut that way too long. Let's try again. All right, and we can just take that little wire end and push it inwards. Oops, this wire's kind of in my way here. Push it in there. And just press down on it. Essentially, we've made a wrap. It shouldn't be too long so it doesn't stick out the front here. And now this other wire, you can either do the same thing here on the other side, but because the bail is already attached via this wire here, you really don't have to. So if you want, you can just pull on it like I did and then just trim it really, really short so you can't see it. It's like this. So before I finish off my other wires, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lock my stone in place. So I'm going to pop it back in here, and then just here on the back with my pliers, I'm going to grab the backmost wire. So this is all repetitive now. What we did before, just push that onto the stone to trap your stone from the back. And then we're going to do the same thing in the front. Ooh. Can't seem to get in here. There we go. It's good. So in the front, I'm going to wedge my pliers in here, try to go all the way down to the bottom here, and put that nice little angular bend. And then same thing here on the other side. There we go. Here's what it kind of looks like. I'm trying to make these a little bit equal and even with each other. So if I tilt it like this and I kind of look from the bottom, I can see these little wires that I bent. And also I can see that this stone needs to be just more to the right, just the whole thing. There we go. So that's one way to check for symmetry. Now I'm just making sure that my stone is secure. It kind of, not that it wobbles. Oh, I see. See how this is like very small? It's not grabbing the edge of my stone too much. So what I'm gonna do to trap my stone better is I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna bend this wire as well. I mean this portion, the top of the wire. So it looks like that, and then I'm gonna do it on the other side. I don't normally do this, but I think just because the stone is really flat, perhaps, it ended up not feeling as secure as I would like it to feel, and I was just afraid that it might, if you kind of really push on it from the back, it might pop out the front. So now there's no risk of that, and it feels nice and secure. And I know this part, you know, doesn't look, I don't like the way that looks, but we're gonna cover that up, so that's not a problem. So I'm just gonna do the basic little side swept little loops here like I do in a lot of my videos, and based on like the very original design that I did many years ago. But feel free to do any kind of decoration here from my other videos that you have seen, that you have liked. Most of them should work with the stone because there's a nice gap up here for you to tug the wires into. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the frontmost right wire, I'm curving it, and then I'm just pushing it this way, and then I am curving it to the right and to the back. And then the other wire is going to follow along. And also we're going to bend it to the back. And now we can trim and tuck away these two wires. So that's why it's good to have that gap that I mentioned before, not putting the wires so close that you don't have a gap here, because now we're gonna tuck these away into this gap, and then I'm just gonna press down on these wire ends one at a time. And then just press them in there, and that kind of wraps them around here and tucks them away. Here's what it looks like in the front. This got a little bit pushed forward, so I'm just gonna gently with my pliers push it back like that. And now we have just these two wires left, so you can just swoop them across as per normal, or you can twist them, which is also fun. But I haven't done this in a while. This is what I did in that very first video all those years ago when I did this side swept thing. I put some half round wire around this wire here, and that added some nice kind of texture and decoration to it. So I'm just feeling inspired to do that again. So I'm going to start my half round wire here, like this. Just get it started. If you don't do enough, it just tends to kind of slide. So I'm just doing a little bit, then I'm going to press down this little wire end, and now I'm going to slide it all the way down here. And just kind of press it down. And if that's long enough, that should kind of stay put and not turn. And you can just add on to it by guiding the wire with your hand and turning the piece. And you're going to end up with this nice little decorative kind of wrap around your wire. So I'm just going to do this for a little bit until it's long enough to reach across. What you can do is you can just keep checking it as you go. So after I've done a little bit, or when I think that I might be getting close, what I would do is I would kind of start to bend this, and I would see that I still have a ways to go. So I would just keep going with it. All right, so that looks nice and long. You can go ahead and bend it and test it to make sure. And then we're just gonna trim that little wire end and just press down and kind of turn it. Oh, it's actually still sticking up here, so press down on it some more. There we go, we have hidden it. So now we're just gonna kind of swoop this across and bring it from front to back. So I'm just kind of messing around with it to get the end of the wrap to end here, like this. That looks good. And now I can trim and tuck it away. Just like that. So all that's left now is just one last wire. This little area still isn't really covered though, there's still a little bit of it left. So if I just kind of swoop this across, I don't love that. So what I'm gonna actually do is I'm gonna take my half round wire, I'm gonna wrap it around this wire as well, and I'm also gonna add some beads. So this is all totally optional. You don't have to do all of this decoration, but I just want to cover up that little portion, and I need to add to this wire because it's too thin to cover that all up on its own. All right, so I'm just finishing up this little wire end. I'm gonna press that down, bend it all the way around, press down on it, and just move it down here, just like this. And now I'm just gonna wrap around it for a bit until it's long enough to make that bend where it'll reach the front. All right, so let me check if that's long enough now. So if I start to kind of curve it, okay, so I probably want to add a few beads, maybe one here and just a few more wraps, and then another one here, or should I do 3? I think I might do 3 beads so it's kind of more symmetrical. So let me go grab some beads. All right, so I have these 3mm beads. This is the size of the hole. They're from Rio Grande, and I noticed that it's just the right size to fit on this wire. Like, it's a pretty snug fit. So I'm just gonna do maybe like 2 more wraps. All right, and now I'm gonna try and get this bead on here. It's a very tight fit, but it does fit. There we go, perfect. So let me look here. Oh yes, this is exactly how I want this to go. I wanted to kind of cover up this area, and that will work perfectly. So now I'm just gonna ignore that the bead is there and just keep wrapping my half round wire, and what happens is it just kind of goes right over the bead. So I'm just gonna do that for a little bit until I get some nice spacing here. Just want some space in between this bead and my next bead. So my next bead, I decided I'm going to use a larger one. So this is 3.75 mil. And now I'm just going to slide that on. And let's see how that looks. All right, I like how that looks. I'm wondering if I should add one more bead afterwards. So I'm gonna just take this wire, keep wrapping. So it's going across the bead like this, which I kind of think looks cool, but if you don't like it, you can just kind of move it so it's not visible. It's up to you. So I'm just gonna do a few more wraps, and then I'm gonna add one more of the smaller beads. I think that'll look good. So I'm just grabbing one more of the smaller 3mm beads and just trying to get it on there. There we go, perfect. Slide that on. Now we can kind of see how that's gonna look. I think there's just one less wrap here, so I'm gonna kind of unwrap this just like one time, and then go ahead. I'm trying to get it symmetrical. So now I just need to do a few wraps, and I'm gonna tuck this away. Oh, that's perfect. That reaches to the back, so I can just trim I'm just gonna press down on that little wire end there. And you have two options here. So if you feel like there's plenty of space here in the back, you can see there isn't for me. I have this wire getting tucked in here, and then here's my stone. There's really not a lot of space, but that's okay, because what we can do is we can just bring it across right underneath that other wire, but just don't tuck it in, bring it all the way across to here, and then here is where we can tuck it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna trim it, but leave an end, roughly like that. And then we're just gonna take that little end and we're gonna just turn it inwards in that direction, and then we're going to press down on it, which is going to tuck it inside of there. All right. And now it has been wrapped around and tucked in there, tucked away. I'm gonna see if I can see it from the other side here. So now if you need to make any adjustments, if anything, moved out of place or lost its symmetry, feel free to do that. If any of these wires have raised up and are forming a gap, are not tight against the stone, you can kind of press on them, like this one here. Press down, maybe just, I'm gonna bend it a little more here. Press it down tightly against my stone, making sure, looking this way again, seeing if it's symmetrical and nothing is, tilted too much to one side or the other. So here's the finished piece. Sorry, I have to hold it like really far back to try to get the whole thing in view. I think it turned out really fun. This does make for some pretty long statement piece type of pendants, but I hope you enjoyed and definitely have fun doing different combinations of different sizes and shapes of stones, because this can turn out looking so different depending on the stones that you used. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!